rose and fell faintly. There was something about her, something that pulled at a distant memory buried deep beneath the years. But her face was still hidden beneath that cloth scarf, frozen stiff against her cheek. Hours passed and the night grew darker. Caleb couldn't sleep. He kept glancing at her, wondering who she was. What brought her out here alone in the storm? Maybe she was running from someone, or something. In these parts, everyone had a story, and most of them didn't end well. He reached out to check her pulse again, his calloused fingers brushing her wrist. Then as he leaned closer, the edge of her scarf slipped, just a little. Enough for the firelight to reveal a strand of golden hair and a glimpse of her face. Caleb froze. His breath caught. That face, it couldn't be. Slowly, his trembling hand pulled the cloth away completely. And in that moment, time itself seemed to stop. Underneath the frost and snow lay the face of Clara Monroe, the woman he once loved and lost. For a long moment, Caleb could only stare. His throat tightened, eyes wide with disbelief. No, it can't be, he whispered hoarsely, his voice cracking under the weight of memory. Clara, the girl who'd once ridden beside him under the open sky, the one who'd vanished years ago after a fire tore through Willow Creek. Everyone said she'd died. Caleb had believed it. He'd buried that pain deep, buried her name with it. But here she was, alive, fragile, half-frozen in his arms. He didn't know whether to thank God or curse the heavens. The storm howled louder, but Caleb didn't hear it anymore. His world had shrunk to the faint rise and fall of her chest, the whisper of her breath. He placed his hand gently against her cheek. "Clara?" he said, barely audible. "If you can hear me, it's me, Caleb. You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you again." The firelight flickered across his face, painting him in shades of guilt and longing. He didn't know what had brought her back into his life, destiny, chance, or punishment. But one thing was certain: this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning. Outside, the storm began to ease, the wind quieting into a soft whisper. But inside Caleb's heart, a tempest had just begun to rage, one that no fire could warm and no dawn could calm. The woman he'd mourned for years was alive, and the truth of what happened that night, the night she vanished, was buried somewhere in the silence between them. And as the fire crackled and the snow melted from her hair, Caleb knew only one thing. Whatever secret she carried back from the dead, it was about to change everything. The morning light crept slow and weak through the cracks of the cabin window, spilling across the wooden floor like liquid gold. The fire had burned low, leaving only embers that pulsed in quiet rhythm. Caleb sat slumped in the chair beside the bed, exhaustion pulling at his eyes, yet sleep never came. His gaze never left the wind howled through the valley like a wounded beast, carrying with it a biting chill that cut through leather and bone alike. Snowflakes danced wildly under the fading light, as the last trace of sunset bled into the horizon. Miles away from town, a lone rider pressed onward through the storm, his coat dusted white, his horse snorting clouds of breath into the freezing air. His name was Caleb Hart, a ranch hand from the outskirts of Willow Creek, a man more used to silence than conversation, more familiar with pain than comfort. Tonight he rode not for work, but for something heavier and something gnawing at his soul like guilt that refused to fade. The storm had come quick, swallowing the land, and all Caleb wanted was to make it back to his cabin before the cold turned deadly. But fate, as it often does on long winter nights, had other plans. Just as he crossed the narrow bend by the frozen river, his horse slowed, ears twitching. Caleb frowned, scanning through the curtain of snow. There, near the riverbank, something dark and still lay half buried in white. He dismounted, his boots crunching deep into the frost, the wind screaming in his ears. As he came closer, his heart began to pound harder. It wasn't an animal. It was a person, a woman, motionless, her face hidden beneath a tattered cloth scarf. Caleb knelt beside her, shaking off snow from her coat. Her skin was pale, her lips almost blue. She wasn't dead, not yet. "You'll freeze out here," he muttered under his breath, brushing snow from her shoulders. Without thinking twice, he lifted her into his arms, her body limp but warm enough to give him hope. "Hold on, ma'am," he whispered. "Just hold on." The cabin wasn't far, half a mile at best, but the snow made every step feel like 10. Caleb's boots slipped on the ice, his breath coming in sharp bursts. He could feel her weight growing heavier, her life hanging by a thread. The storm didn't let up. It roared louder, as if trying to claim her. But Caleb pushed through, his jaw clenched, his heart pounding with something he hadn't felt in years, and fear. Not for himself, but for this stranger who had fallen into his world from the dark sky. Finally, through the veil of snow, the faint golden glow of his cabin appeared. That sight alone gave him the strength to push forward. He kicked the door open with his boot, rushed in and laid her gently near the fire. The warmth of the flames slowly filled the small wooden cabin. Caleb tossed another log into the hearth, then grabbed a blanket from his cot and wrapped it around her trembling frame. Her clothes were soaked, her fingers stiff from the cold. He moved quickly, boiling water, making coffee, rubbing warmth into her hands. He spoke softly, more to himself than her. "You made it now, miss. You're safe." The storm continued to rage outside, hammering against the walls, but inside, the fire flickered like a heartbeat, fragile yet alive. He sat beside her, watching as her chest, woman who lay beneath the blanket. Clara Monroe, the ghost of his past, breathing, alive and wrapped in his old wool coat. He still couldn't believe it. He'd watched her die once, or thought he had. The night of the fire, the screams, the smoke, the burning barn. It was all etched in his memory like a brand on his heart. He'd blamed himself, cursed himself for not being there in time. And now, after years of torment, here she was, half frozen, half alive, and carrying a secret that hung heavier than the snow outside. When she stirred, it was like a dream breaking through fog. Her eyelashes fluttered, and for the first time, he saw her eyes, soft, gray, and filled with confusion. She blinked at him, voice weak as a whisper. "Caleb?" He froze, his heart leaping to his throat. "Yeah," he managed, his voice rough. "It's me." Tears stung his eyes, though he fought to hold them back. "You're safe now, Clara. You're home." She tried to sit up, but pain crossed her face and she fell back with a gasp. Caleb leaned forward quickly, steadying her shoulder. "Easy. You've been through hell. Just rest." But Clara shook her head slowly. "No, I can't rest, not yet. You don't understand. They'll come looking for me." Caleb frowned, confusion flashing across his face. "Who?" She hesitated, eyes darting toward the frosted window, as if she feared someone was standing out there in the snow. "The men from Hollow Ridge," she whispered. "They think I'm dead. I was supposed to stay that way." Caleb's jaw tightened. Hollow Ridge, the outlaw town that sat beyond the mountain line, a place cursed by greed and blood. "What did they want with you?" he asked, his voice low. Clara's fingers trembled as she clutched the blanket. "They took everything, Caleb. My father's land, his cattle, even his name. They killed anyone who stood in their way. I escaped that night, the night the fire burned our barn. But they followed me for years, and when they found me again, I ran into the storm. I didn't think I'd make it." Caleb's hands balled into fists. He could see the terror in her eyes, the pain of years spent running. "You should have come to me," he said quietly. I would have found you, protected you. A tear slipped down her cheek. You were the only person I wanted to come to, she said, her voice breaking. But I thought you hated me for leaving. I thought you moved on. Caleb shook his head, his voice cracking. I never stopped thinking about you. Clara, I never could. The silence that followed was thick with emotion, too. Souls torn apart by time and fate, now forced together again by the cruelty of winter and the mercy of chance. Hours passed as she regained strength. Caleb made her soup, helped her sit up by the fire. Each glance they shared carried the weight of years. Lost, love buried under guilt and snow. But peace was short-lived. As dusk fell again, the quiet was broken by a distant sound, the faint crunch of boots on snow outside the cabin. Caleb's instincts flared. He grabbed his rifle from the wall, eyes narrowing. Clara's face went pale. They found me, she whispered. Caleb's heart hammered. He moved to the window, peering through the frost. Two dark figures moved near the tree line, their shadows long in the dying light. He turned to Clara. Stay here. Don't move. The door creaked as he stepped outside, the cold biting hard. Snow whipped around him as he raised his rifle. Who's out there? He shouted. No answer. Just the whisper of wind and the faint jingle of spurs. Then a voice came, rough, mocking. Well, I'll be damned. Caleb Hart, the ranch boy, still playing hero. Caleb knew that voice. Wade Collier, leader of the Hollow Ridge gang, a man he'd once ridden with before turning away from that life. You got no business here, Wade, Caleb growled. Wade laughed. Oh, I got plenty of business. You've got something that belongs to me, a woman. Caleb's grip tightened. She ain't yours, Wade. She's under my protection. In an instant, the storm exploded into violence. A gunshot cracked the silence, echoing through the valley. Caleb ducked behind the woodpile, returning fire. Sparks flew, bullets tore into the cabin walls. Inside, Clara crawled to the corner, clutching the blanket around her. She wanted to scream, but fear choked her voice. Caleb moved with the skill of a man who'd fought before, but he was outnumbered. Two shadows became four, closing in fast. He fired again. One man dropped, but the others kept coming. The snow was stained red where they fell. Then in the chaos, Wade's voice called out again. Don't be stupid, Hart. Give her up and I'll let you live. Caleb's voice thundered back. You'll have to kill me first. And that was exactly what Wade intended. Another shot rang out, this time closer. Caleb stumbled, the rifle slipping from his hand, blood seeping from his shoulder. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself up. But before Wade could finish the job, a loud crack split the air. Wade's hat flew off and he fell face first into the snow. Smoke rose from the cabin doorway. Clara stood there, clutching Caleb's spare revolver, her hands shaking but steady enough. Her voice trembled. You were right, Caleb. I should have come to you. For a moment, everything was still. The snow fell soft again, covering the blood and footprints as if the land itself wanted to forget. Caleb turned to her, wincing from pain. You saved my life, he said, half smiling. Clara stepped closer, tears freezing on her cheeks. No, she whispered. You saved mine first. She helped him inside, wrapped his wound, and as the fire burned bright again, the storm outside finally faded into silence. That night, for the first time in years, peace found them both. They sat by the fire, hand in hand, the weight of the past melting away with the snow. The cabin light glowed softly across the white hills, a beacon of love reborn from pain. And as the wind carried the last whispers of winter away, Caleb knew one truth. Sometimes, the heart you thought was lost forever finds its way back when the cold is at its worst.